Right. And we are live. Episode 007, Origins Part 2.
See, I've been looking forward to episode 7 simply because it's 007. I grew up being like a James Bond fan. Um, all of them. I like Daniel Craig. I like all those, James Bond. And so he just said 007, not 007. So I'm a little disappointed, but it's all right. Maybe we'll do some edits here.
Yeah. 007. Cut that one out.
Just kidding. Today I was in my car thinking about like, what are we going to talk about today? And tomorrow, by the time you guys listen to this, it'll be a new year. It'll be 2025, which is freaking wild.
Today is New Year's Eve as we're recording this. So
yeah. So it'll be 2025 in about 12 hours.
Yep.
And I was like, what do we want to talk about? What should be the topic? Initially, we're going to do, speed evolution, the evolution of speed, which we are going to be doing here real soon, which is my favorite topic is speed. But I felt it was appropriate to do an Origins Part 2.
Yeah, episode 1, we did an Origins, but it was more so about what it is we're going to be covering inside the podcast. Yeah. So today's a bit more specific on exactly who it is we are, why it is what we do what we do, and just try and give you guys a bit more information about us in case you don't already know.
Yeah, and we have some pretty cool projects that we've been working on, for the new year. Very exciting projects working with different populations that I think it's important that we talk about. And 7 episodes. This is our 7th episode, 007, of course.
Yeah,
7 episodes in, and we haven't really talked about any of those programs. Which, to be honest, like our number one focus with this podcast is to shed a spotlight on any program in the Temecula-Murrieta Valley that's impacting kids, and that's still our mission. But our ultimate mission is to impact the next generation. So a little bit about my background. So I'm the owner of Functional Speed Academy. I started my company in 2015. But I've been doing this since 2007. Prior to me starting my company, I did it the traditional way. I was in a gym. My first job was at an LA Fitness in Moreno Valley. And at the time, I was enrolled at UCR, and it was kind of like a segue job, right? Like, oh, this is the job before the job.
Yeah.
And growing up in athletics, I fell in love, with fitness at an early age, and that job, escalated, and here I am now, in 2000. So I was in the Riverside area. That's where I'm from. I was there all the way until about 2010.
Yeah.
That's when I ended up over here in Murrieta, Temecula.
Looking back, if you got to talk to your old self who just got his first gym job, what's his thought process on what your future looks like? Is it anything even close to what it is you're doing today? Or
you know what, I could have, the reality is I would not have envisioned what I'm doing now, working with kids, and I work a lot. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that I do, whether it's on my laptop or reaching out to different programs, and I'm trying to be impactful. So there's a lot of work I do, but the reality is it's not work to me. I stopped. Yeah. I would say I stopped working in 2015, meaning doing a job, and now I'm doing what I love. So I feel that if I was to talk to my younger version, I would say jump on that bandwagon a lot earlier, because the reason I actually went on my own in 2015 was because of my clients. I had been working with the same clients for, at that time, would have been like 5 years. Some of those same clients I still work with today, which is crazy because I have some clients that have been with me for, almost 14 years, 13, 14, 15 years. Same clients. I actually trained some of their kids. One of the kids I just started working with, a football player, I knew him before when he was like a year old. I knew him before his sister was born, and I've trained his dad for a very long time. And I'm like, he's bigger than me. He's 16 years old now.
Wow.
And I'm like, that is so wild. But I remember in 2015, I had a lot of clients, a specific client I used to work with. He was a really good friend, good mentor. His name was Rick Robbins. Sadly, he passed away some years ago. He was on vacation, and his kids got caught in the riptide. He saved his kids' lives, but by that time, he was gassed out and was unable to save himself. So that's an unfortunate story. But he used to talk to me all the time about, hey, Henry, you got to take care of people. You want to be as impactful and be as selfless as possible. He goes, you got to go on your own. He goes, you got to go do this on your own. At the time I was working at Gold's Gym in Murrieta, and I think it's an EOS now. They were bought out, but besides the fact,
yeah.
So he was one of my biggest influences as far as like going on my own. And then I had a lot of clients that were like, hey, Henry, you got to go do this. So if you leave, like, we're not here for the gym. We're here for you.
Yeah.
And me at the time, I'm 37. So at the time I was like 26, 25. And so I give a lot of credit to my clients because they're the ones that actually kind of pushed me out the door and said, go do this on your own. And I remember when on my own, I had another client that she goes, oh, one day you're going to, don't forget about us, Henry, don't forget us older people. You're going to be like writing books and doing all this stuff. And I'm just like, cool. I'm still young. I'm in my 20s and I'm just like, okay, like I'm just want to train people. I'm having fun. I'm doing it privately. It's a pretty cool gig. Right. And then in 2019, I wrote my first course on the Functional Speed Academy Specialist course. It was a course for other trainers. And right now, one of my cool projects for 2025 is I'm working on a kid's book called The Evolution of Speed. So I'm going to have a book for parents that want to help out their kids. Yeah. And it's going to be, I don't want to say watered down, but it's going to be an ABCs of like speed. Like if you're a dad and you just want to help out your kid. And then I'm going to have another version that's going to be for trainers. But that's another, excuse me, that was told to me at the time by one of my clients. And they always saw this potential in me that I don't want to say I didn't see it because I've always had a big vision. I've always been driven, but they saw hidden potentials that I didn't see in myself. And so to answer your question, if I can go back in time, right? Back to the future, right?
Talk to your old self.
Talk to my old self. I'd say, you know what? Go do these things a lot earlier because all these things that I'm doing now, I do feel that I could have done 10, 15 years ago. And that's okay. We live, we learn. But that's kind of the advice I would tell myself. Would I have listened? I hope I would have. Yeah. My 21-year-old version was very, I was coachable, stubborn, but I was just like any other 21, 22, 23-year-old. I knew everything.
Yeah. That curve we talked about,
right. The Dunning-Kruger effect, false sense of knowledge. I felt like I had it all put together and I really didn't. I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything. It's like the longer I go in my career now, it's like the more I realize how much I don't know. The one consistent thing is I've always wanted to help people. I've always wanted to make an impact with kids. And that drive, that fire is still burning. It's burning more. I feel like it just keeps growing. And I remember before I went on my own, it became like I'm clocking in, I'm clocking out. And it wasn't so fulfilling. So I really do. If I can go back, I would be like, you know what, go on your own a lot earlier. So
I feel like that's probably why a lot of your clients feel so comfortable and stay around so long too, especially because if I was with a trainer and he trained me exactly the same way all my life, I'd probably question it and be like, there's nothing new coming out, nothing new showcasing, there's a better way to do it. It might make me feel like my trainer's being a little bit, he got to a good point and now he's just going static with it. And with you, every year you're always implementing something new. I mean, since when I've talked with you and used to work with you back in 2016, 2017, a lot of your methods have changed. And I mean like a lot. And it just showcases how much you're willing to keep going and keep learning because there's always something new. And I think that's, as a client perspective, that's a huge thing to see within a trainer is he actually willing to admit his old way maybe wasn't the most optimal way and then learn something new and how to do it the better way.
Honestly, that's like the competitor in me. I always want to grow. I always want to get better. Right. and I have to challenge my own bias. I've talked about this on previous episodes about being able to challenge my own bias. But at that time, I was temporarily confident in what I believe, but knowing that it's going to change.
Yeah.
And it's funny because now, I've been doing this for a long time. I've done continuing education is a big deal to me. I'm always trying to sharpen the blade, but now I'm going back to old things I learned in 2010, 2012. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's still relevant? What's not? So I feel it's important that you're always having this growth mindset.
Yeah.
And one thing I always tell all my clients is that, and my athletes, is like, if you're training with me for a year and a year later, our dialogue has not changed, meaning my skill set, I'm not bringing something new to the table, maybe it's time for you to move on. And I've always had that, I don't want to say it's a fear. Obviously I work for myself, and some people say, one of my friends goes, man, you don't have a boss, it must be awesome. I said, no, it's not true. I have like 35 bosses.
Yeah.
I have a ton of bosses, and it's the kids I work with, the adults I work with. And I want to bring the best. I want to bring no bad session. My goal, my personal goal for every session, whether it's a private session, whether it's a speed session, whether it's a homeschool session, like, I want to bring the energy. I want to bring the knowledge. I want to bring the results.
Yeah.
And in order for me to always do that, I have to constantly be leveling up. So that's something that's been instilled in me, that growth mindset. It came from sports. I genuinely believe that. As a kid, I grew up playing basketball, wrestling. It's just like learning. When I was a kid, it was like, okay, you had a good game, but what could you have done better?
Yeah.
Or you had a bad game, like finding the wins and the losses and finding the losses and the wins. So that mindset started for me early on. And now I'm still the same way. I don't want it. Like right now, trying not, to trying to stay as humble as possible, right? But I'm a lot better today than I was today a year ago.
That's
Right?
the hope. Yeah.
And that's always been my goal. And I want to be able to say the same thing today a year from now. It's like, wow, I've grown, whether it be not just in my skill set as far as like being able to train people, but as a human, I've become more patient. I've become a better listener. So those are things that I'm always trying to develop. Always trying to develop not just my skill sets, but I'm trying to develop my character. And I'm trying to, my goal, impact, give back. Am I doing enough? So those are the things that are constantly driving me.
Yeah, there's two ways you can go as a business owner. You can either have the attitude Henry has, where it's, sure, I don't have a boss, but I do have a boss, and it's all my clients, and I have to make sure they're always happy. I have to do it. And it's not just by being a great person, but it's also by trying to learn what it is you're actually doing, trying to always experience and get something new. Or you can be the other person where it's just, you realize there are things you can work on, but you just decide to be too hard-headed or just stick with it, that you just feel like you're perfect. But even when life showcases you, hey, there's something you can work on, I feel like that's where a lot of business owners tend to fail, especially within, let's say, like the personal training aspect, because they think the way they learn is the best way, and they're completely shutting the door instead of allowing themselves to even walk in it. Because it might not end up being the thing that you're going to get into, but at least you took the opportunity to make sure. Because at the end of the day, if you can't even do it for yourself, at least do it for your client, because your client's the most important part 100%. Of your business.
I think just growing the vision, having a big vision. I want a vision that keeps compounding and keeps growing, right? So my vision started off in the beginning when I was at, let's say, LA Fitness. It was just like, who can I help at Gold Gym? When I was working for, corporate America, it's just like, I still want to help people. I want to give them a good time. When people walk through the door, I want them to look forward to their session. That's always been my goal. But now, 2015, 2017, that vision got bigger. I remember in 2017, 18, 19, I started working with schools. I worked at Temecula Valley High School. I was the strength coach for a couple of years there, and won CIF. That was pretty cool. And just seeing the excitement, seeing things develop from start to finish. I remember, obviously, excuse me. I remember the speech that the coach gave at the end of the season. They had lost in the playoffs. Granted, they hadn't won a game, I want to say, in 2 years.
Yeah.
So he gave a speech, set the tone for the next season, and just seeing that whole process, seeing the development of, the off season, the summer, the early morning practices, the after school sessions, the speed sessions, the strength sessions, the film room, going to all the games and just seeing that whole process and seeing how those kids were impacted. I'm like, man, those are memories those kids are going to have for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So that just got me excited. And kind of give you a little more insight. We're talking about origins at Temecula Valley High School. I remember when I worked with them at that time, I was working with a handful of their athletes. I've been working with kids from all the schools in the Valley. And I remember at that time, I said, man, I want to give back to somebody. That's always been my thing. It's just like, what could I do to give back? I had done clinics. I've sponsored kids. I actually have a grant program that I started a couple of years ago. So kids who can't afford training and they don't have access to the right resources, maybe due to, financial circumstances or, family dynamics.
Yeah.
So I've always given back to kids, but I said, I want to do it on a bigger scale. I want to give to a program. And so I started researching all the football programs in the Valley from, Great Oak. I know that's your school, Chaparral, Vista Marietta. And the program that stood out the most to me was TV. The reason TV stood out to me is because they were a losing program at the time. They had gone 2 years without having one win.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I remember I was like, man, this would be awesome, right? This would be a cool story. If I go to like the top program in the Valley and say, hey, I'm a strength coach. This is what I do. I want to help your team. I want to give back to your program and, donate my time.
Yeah.
They win. People are going to be like, well, they were good anyways. They're going to win regardless.
Yeah. Kind of like last episode when we were talking about LeBron James. Well, and it's LeBron James at the end of the day. So yeah, same concept.
So I went to TV and I said, wow, we got a lot. I met with the head coach and actually, let me backtrack a little bit. During me having this idea in my head, the head coach was brought to my attention because I was working with some of the TV athletes. And one of the things I love to do, and if I've trained you or I've trained your kids, you probably know this about me. I go to the games. I love going to the games. Like I'm in the trenches, training them, beating them up, right? Getting them stronger and faster. But I like being a cheerleader, right? I like going to the games and cheering these kids on. I want to see them on the field. It's fun. So I'd always gone to the games and the coach allowed me to be on the sidelines and kind of stretch them out, help them out. And the coach reached out to me and said, hey, I've noticed that you're always on the sidelines watching the kids. And I've had a lot of coaches reach out to me saying we can train your team. He reached out to me. There was a referral. So one of his old players, his name is Stefan. He's actually a trainer in town. He had connected us together and he goes, yeah, I recognize you because you were always on the sidelines, like cheering these boys on. So that's how that connection happened. And then when I found out they hadn't won in like 2 years, new coach, new program, I was like, man, this is a pretty cool challenge. This would be a pretty cool story. Long story short, we won CIF. Right? No. They want. Let me make sure I'm not getting my facts mixed up here. They made it to the playoffs, and then the following year we won CIF. That's how it played out. So CIF, I think it was first round exit, which is huge because going from not winning one season game to making it to the playoffs, to winning a game, and then the following year, we won CIF. Got, I think it was 11 scholarships. It was pretty awesome. The kids were getting scholarships. And now that program is, to this day, I think they're still doing well. But that was part of like my vision, my ability to give back. I was like, I want to give back to a program that, where the story is going to be cool, where they need it. If a program is losing that much, it's not one thing that needs to be fixed. There's a lot of variables, a lot of moving pieces that got to get, put in the right place. So that's something I've always done. And I'm always looking for programs. So if you guys are listening to this and you have a program and you're like, man, we'd love to have you guys out here. I do it all the time. I donate my time. And I remember during that time, one of the things that I did is obviously I'm still a business owner. So the coach would tell the parents that, hey, go train with Coach Henry.
Yeah.
And obviously that at their expense. And I remember the parents were like, oh, wow. Like, what if we can't afford it? Of course we want to go train with you. And that's where I actually started the grant program, let them know like, hey, look, we got scholarships grants will help out your kids, get them the training they need.
Yeah.
And the only thing I asked the parents was for honesty. Like, just don't lie about your situation, because I didn't want kids missing out, because I was that kid. We've talked about that in
Yeah.
episode 1, where, I was mowing lawns to like pay for my cleats and my basketball shoes. So I know those kids exist. So I've always been driven to give back. And, there's a lot of behind the scenes things that I've always done. And I don't talk about it because I don't want to flaunt it. That's not my agenda. The ones that know are the ones that matter. The parents know when I'm there supporting their kid. Um, the kids know when I'm there supporting them.
Yeah.
And that's impactful to me.
Yeah.
Take it a step further, the relationships that are being built with these kids is awesome, because I've had kids tell me things where I'm like, I'm not going to talk about those details, but I'm like, that's some very serious stuff.
Yeah.
And then I will reach out to their parents and say, hey, confidential, your son or daughter told me XYZ. Just want to let you know this is going on and this is how they feel about the situation. And these parents, I'm like, if you tell them that I told you, then that trust is going to be broken. Right. So there's a very interesting dynamic in the relationships I build with the parents, the relationships I build with the kids. And I love it, because now I see these kids and they're flourishing.
Yeah.
They've started their careers. A lot of these kids have kids already. They're married. And I'm just like, man, if I got to imprint even 1% into that, then I'm happy I did my job right. So that's always been my driving force of impacting, is like, I want the impact to be beyond the field, beyond the court. And to this day, that's what gets me to jump out of bed and say, man, let's go get after it. So
Build a human, make them into the great humans in the society and let them flourish out in the world.